Begin the current Daf Masechta is Gitin Daf Nun Dal. Begin 12 lines down to the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues this discussion from the previous Daf regarding the halacha of Hezek Shein and Nicker, regarding Konter Shogigot Mezid, regarding this discussion of the halacha of our Mishnah, which was Metamim, Medamim, Manasach, that our Mishnah said that B'mezig Michai, B'shogi Mipater. We brought a brayso where Meir says no, you can Michai both B'shogi and B'mezid. Our Gemara continues trying to bring rayas regarding this halacha, specifically what we just had answered. We said that on the previous daf that according to Meir, that when it's rabbinic, we don't knas shagot amazid. Therefore, he holds that, meaning to the contrary. We said according to Meir, you can be chayiv by both b'shogi and b'mezid, but that's only by Rabbanan. Although we say by Bishlan Shabbos, he holds you're not going to knas because that's by Deraisa. The Gemara is going to come to contradict that interpretation of what we said in the previous daf, regarding of that Remeir does not knas shogig atamezid, meaning that he does knas shogig atamezid by Draban needs chizik. We're going to show you that it's not. Just goes by the Bekazach and the Chazal turn to the Dafachain. I'm doing today's daf. Some discussing today's daf, like we said, the Machlek Yemen and Yehuda regarding if we penalize when you do it by mistake because of when you do it deliberately. The case where Remeir holds that by Drabanan loy konter shogig, as we said in the previous daf, that by rabbinic law we said he does penalize. We're going to show you cases where he does not, and seemingly as a contradiction. And the halacha of pigul, which we mentioned in the previous time, is going to be the next mishnah when Kam are mafagel, they have machshava that the carbon should be eaten or done beyond its designated time, which is the halacha kam shepigul b'migdash mizin chayim. We said if they do it deliberately, they're going to be chayiv. Also, the interesting case of Amalai, someone tells him, he says, Zabachim shasisi imcha b'yom pleni nispaglu. The guy says, the kohen meets him in the street. He says, you know what? Remember that carbon you brought to me? I was the one that was doing the avodah. By the way, I had a machshava pigul. In them is not believed. We'll see why. And the guy says, Sefer Torah Gisavtul Pliny. Guy says, you know that Sefer Torah I wrote for this guy? Askar Shaloi Gisavim Lishmon. When I wrote God's names, I didn't have it in name for God. Or Gevil Shaloi Batim Lishmon. When I made the parchment process, I didn't do it for the sake of a Sefer Torah, which these would be problems. What the halacha is going to be regarding his payment, regarding the validity of the Sefer Torah. So begin the current Daf Nudal, 12 lines down by Tashma, which again we had said. Regarding the halacha of kansina shogig atamezid, we said in the previous daf, Remeir holds, but Rabbanan will be kansu shogig because different say from tzich and chizik and different halacha of our Mishnah. He holds not like our Mishnah. Echa shogig, echa mezid can be chayiv because we have to support the rabbinic law. The Raisa the kansu shogig because the retired don't need chizik. Yehuda on the other hand held like our Mishnah. He said no, but Rabbanan we don't knas shogig because you did a very light isser. But the Raisa to the contrary, then we do penalize you because you did a very severe isser. That was what we had on the previous daf, and that's where we begin right now because we're going to ask several halachas Remeir holds. Not like what we said on the previous stop. Says Gemara Toshim out being a raya that Remeir holds by the rabbinic law that we don't penalize, not the way we said regarding our halacha of the Mishnah. What does the brayso say? Achal truma. If a non-kohen eats truma by mistake, even, and this is also a complex case, even if it's tameya, so mishalim chulin tahirin, he has to pay back unconsecrated produce to the kohen that he ate the truma from. That's tahar. The Gemara is going to ask, why does he have to pay back tahar? You ate tameh, why can't you pay back tameh? But be that as it may, when someone eats truma by mistake, the halacha does not require him to pay monies. He pays back produce. And he doesn't pay back truma, he pays back fixed chulin. And through the payment, it becomes truma when the kohen gets it, because the pasuk says, "V'nasan l'kohen is a kodesh." What does that mean? V'nasan l'kohen is a kodesh. By giving it to the kohen, it becomes kodesh. So obviously, that we need something that the title of truma could take effect on it, which is produce and not money, because money obviously cannot be eaten as truma. But if someone deliberately eats truma, actually has a different halacha, then he has to actually pay money. But here we're talking about he ate it by mistake. So he did it by mistake, so he pays back chulin tahirin. Says the brayso, shilim chulin tamei mahu. What's the halacha if he paid back chulin that's tamei? Meaning he's supposed to pay back chulin that's tar, but if he paid back chulin that's tamei, what's the halacha? So Amma Sumchas B'Shum Remeir says like this: Bishogig, meaning if by mistake he paid back, meaning he didn't know that this was tamei chulin, he didn't realize. And the guy says, by the way, you realized that the way you were carrying it with the sherets or whatever was tamei. That's what you paid me back. I didn't know. So Remeir says, okay, tashlum of tashlumin. After the fact, it is considered val tashlumin. He's going to be exempt with what he paid back with. And what will happen is this chulin tamei that he gave him will become truma tamei, but that's exactly what he ate. He ate truma that was tamei, and now he's essentially paying back truma tamei also. Fine, it's okay. But if he did it b'mezid deliberately, he's paying back deliberately with chulin tamei. Says Remeir, ain't tashlum of tashlumin. His tashlum is not valid. Which Gemara is going to ask, why not? well, it's wrong, even if it's not ideal, but it's exactly what he ate, fine, that won't be valid. The sages say, whether he did it by mistake or whether he did it deliberately, tashluma is tashlumin. It's going to be a payment, meaning it will become truma, and it'll be the kohen's money. And if he wants to be mekadesh a womb with it, it'll be mekadeshes, meaning it's a valid payment. But we make you go ahead because of a penalty to now do what we told you to do. To bebek chulun, that's tahar, but it doesn't become truma because that's only for a penalty. But biblically, you paid back already with what you gave that was chulun, that was tummy. Now that's the brisa, but it's not done yet because Valvinma, we asked on this brisa, it doesn't seem to be correct. Because b'meizid amai, why contra meir when you do it deliberately? Does he say in tashlum of tashlum it's not going to be a valid payment? Why are you penalizing him when he does it deliberately with the payment? What do you mean? But what he did deliberately is not inferior payment. Tabil bracha, he should get a blessing. He's doing even better than what he damaged. Because the achel, what did he eat from the kind? Truma, that's tame, which is midid lechazli b'mei tumasai. It's not fit for him in his days of tuma, because if someone eats truma with his body being impure, so it's usher, and even if it itself is tummy. And what's he paying back to him? Chul, that's tummy, which is midi dechaz lemei tumasai. It's something that's at least fit him in his state of tumma, because a kohen that's tummy could have stuff that tummy, just not truma tummy. Truma tummy is actually more severe. Now Rashi points out, although at the end of the day, the chul that he's paying him is becoming truma, which is not fit for him, so it's going to be tummy. So why is it better? Why tavla bracha? Says Rashi, yeah, but lamaisa, he intended to pay him chulun that's tummy. Now he didn't know it's going to become truma when you give it. But nasla kain becomes the kaidish, but at least it's at least equal. So why are you penalizing him? If he does deliberately, it's not going to be considered as payment. So Vama Rabbi says you're right. Vama Kedi, and some say it was Kedi. There's words missing from the brisa. You have to read like this. But actually a different case. Achal truma tameya. Someone ate truma that was tummy. Meshalem koldahu. The truth is, you're right. You can pay back whatever you want, whatever chulin it is, whether tar, whether tummy, like we said, because even though it becomes truma tummy, but that's exactly what you ate. That's not a problem. The problem is if achal truma tahira, you ate truma that's tahar, then meshalem chulin time. Then you have to pay back what you ate, which is chulin that's tar. Shinim chulin tamein mao. This was the machlokes, not regarding chulin. If you pay back chulin tamei on the case of when you ate truma that was tahar, that's a machlokes. If you did it by mistake, tashlum of tashlumin. The payment is a payment because the guy who eats truma by shegig is an interesting halacha. He pays back according to volume, not according to monetary value, as the Gemara says in Pesach. Now, so even though this case of truma is worse than what he ate, which was tahar, biblically it's going to be considered as a tashlumin, because you pay back according to volume, not value, and that you're paying back something of volume of the same volume. And the Rabban also didn't penalize him because the Maisa did it by mistake. The Maisa, it does deliberately. That's what he was saying. You knew it was tamei. Then ain't tashlumin. Then says Remeir, okay, that's not going to be a valid payment because the Rabban penalized him because you're intending to cause a loss for the kohen. Obviously, it's worth much less than when it's tamei than when it's tar, because he can only use it for his animal or for cooking his food. The sages say, no, echad either one, b'shaygu or b'mezid, tashlum of tashlum, it's going to be a payment, but we're going to penalize you, you're going to have to pay back chulun that's tar. And wait, we're not done yet. He said in Yevamis on Daf Tzadik Yom Aleph that even the case of b'mezid, that Remeir says that your payment is not going to be a payment, that just means to say to totally exempt you. In other words, you're going to have to go back and pay chulun taharin like Rabbanan. So then what's the machlekes? Machlekes was in the case of shegig. That's where he disagrees with Rabbanan. Because the difference between them is, do we penalize when you do it by mistake, because of when you can do it deliberately? As the parenthesis says, because from Rashi it sounds like Rashi saying it, but Remeir holds, like he says, no, we're not going to penalize it when you do by mistake because when you do it deliberately. And the sages say, then we're going to penalize you, and in both cases you're going to have to pay chulun tahirin. Wait a second, says Rashi. This is a case of an Issa de Rabbanan. Why? Because like we said, biblically, it's a bona fide payment. Because you don't pay according to value, you pay according to volume. So when you're paying chulun tameim, even if you did it deliberately, that's only Issa de Rabbanan. And yet we see, even though it's Issa de Rabbanan, Remeir is not going to penalize you. Didn't we say in the previous stuff that in the halach of Ar Mishlam Tamadam and Nasa, which is Rabbanan, Remeir is going to be constant Shaygot Amazed? So why over here we saying by Drabanan that he's not? So the Gemara has one answer that it takes it for a bunch of different cases. Hachi hashta. Can you compare the cases? Hasam over there, meaning over here, in this case, this guy is an upstanding person. He's trying to pay back the truma that he ate from the kohen. Anan nekim balikin say we're going to get up, we're going to penalize him for his mistake. No, a guy did a mistake. But why is it different? Metam medameya, says Rashi. There, Rashi's words are in asik b'teva. You were up to no good. Meaning, you weren't trying to pay back someone. You, by mistake, you spilled the shiratzim over this guy's stuff. Okay, we're going to penalize you. Because divri say from tzrich and chizik. So that's the fundamental principle why their rabbinic is going to be machman here. You're trying to do something good. You messed up. Okay, we're not going to penalize you. Similarly, the Gemara says a few of these cases. Tashema, another brayso says like this: Dam shenitma, blood that became tamei in the base of Mikdash. Bezarka, and the kohen sprayed the tamei blood. So bishagi, if he did it by mistake, hurtza, it's accepted. The reason for that is even though tumah is not acceptable, but the tzitz that the kohen gadol wears, it appeases and it makes the meat going to be permitted to be eaten. But if the kohen did it b'mezid deliberately, lo hurtza is not acceptable rabbinically because it's a penalty. We're going to say the meat is forbidden to be eaten, but the owner will get atonement. Now, this spraying the blood deliberately is an issa drabana because biblically the tzitz is meratza likatchila, even no matter what your intention is. So wait a second. So you see over here that we're not knasing shaygig, but shaygig is acceptable, but mezid lo hurtza. I thought by drabana you cannot shaygig the mezid. So Amluchar Meir would tell you that hachi hashta. Right, so that's Taisus. Taisus points that out. Taisus says, although this is a brisa, and your Meir didn't say it, but it's not a mishnah, so you don't say stam asnit remeir. Says Taisus, yeah, but Taisus says that we're trying to explain it. We're relying on the stam mishnah in Pesachim, whatever. Say based it on that why we would say that it would be going like remeir. So remeir says hachi hashta. You can compare the cases. Hasam over there, meaning in this case of this brisa, the person is trying to get atonement. We're going to penalize him on his mistake, which Rashi says also. He says the Gemara could have answered Hamani Rabbi Hudahi that doesn't penalize by rabbinic law. Actually only penalized by biblical because like it's not a stam masnitin and it's rather a brisa in menachis. But he says Rashi says that the Gemara preferred to try to answer that even if it is remeir, right? Not necessarily does it have to be remeir. Taisus tries to show that it would be remeir. But either way, Tashma Gemara says, let's bring another question, another raya from a Mishnah Masechtas Trumas. Mishnah says, I'm Asa b'Shabbos. Someone separates his types on Shabbos, so which you're not supposed to. But Shagi, you did it by mistake. Yochel, you could eat it. But Mezer lo yochel, if you deliberately cannot eat it. Now Rashi points out that that's a Issa Drabanan, as the Mishnah teaches in Beis Daf Vav Man Aleph, which is that you're not supposed to separate Trumas and Ma'aser because it looks like you're fixing, which obviously Tikkun is forbidden, Tikkun Mana, Binyan, all these things. So when you're separating Ma'aser on Shabbos, that's a Stam Asnit in the Masechtas Trumas. Now, generally, on anonymous Mishnah is Remeir. So I thought Remeir doesn't penalize, he penalizes by rabbinic law, Shaygad the Ma'aser. Here he's not. Says again, Hachasaka, you compare the cases. Hasam Garbal is going to come up, and the other person is intending to make it kosher, to make Trumas and Ma'aser. He did it by mistake, we're going to penalize him? What's it Tashmat to bring another raya? Also over there in Masechtas Trumas. It says, Hamat L'Kelim B'Shabbos. If someone immerses his vessels in the mikvah on Shabbos, where immersing your vessels is only Issa Drabanan, as the Gemara says in Beya, Daf Yomi because it looks like you're fixing something. You're not really fixing, but it looks like because you could use it now. So B'Shagi, if you did it by mistake, you could use it, but basically you cannot use them. So again, all these contradictions are we're posing Remeir and Remeir because the Stam Masnit is Remeir, who previously we had said by rabbinic law he knases Shaigot Mezid, like in our Mishnah. Why over here is he saying Shaigig we're not going to knas? Says Gemara, could you compare the case in the Hasam Gabal Turmanikam? He's trying to purify his vessel. He's trying to do a good thing. And now we're going to penalize him, and therefore we don't penalize him. Okay, so that's done with Remeir. Now the Gemara moves on that V'rami did Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda, but we have a contradiction with Rabbi Yehuda b'Drabanan because he's the opposite of Meir. He said by rabbinic law we don't penalize you. We only penalize you by biblical law. We're going to pose a contradiction on him now. The time like learn the Brisa is Gitin Daf base. The Brisa says it's discussing what's called a goizi perich. A goizi perich was certain types of high quality nuts that if it gets mixed, if they're not kosher, let's say arlo, whatever it is, or some avodah whatever it is, it's not going to become batal, even 1,000 to 1. The reason for that is because they're significant, they're very chashav. A davar chashav from rabbinic law does not become batal. Now, what happens if the nuts of arlo get crushed and then it falls into regular chulin nuts? So then it's going to be batal because it's not chashav anymore; it's already crushed. Now, what happens, says the Brisa, if naflu, first it falls in, and then in a spot, so once it's in the mixture, then it gets crushed. So says the Brisa, echad, whether it was crushed by mistake, where the guy didn't intend to nullify from its chashibas, he was just crushing his nuts. And now it could be nullified in the ratio of 200 to 1, as the halacha of Arla requires. When you have something Arla, has to be bottled rabbinically in a ratio of 200 to 1. Or whether it's deliberately, he wanted to make sure that now it can become bottled because he just lost his whole nut pile. Lo yalu, either way, it's not going to be bottled even in 1,000. That's Divrei Meir Rabbi Huda. So wait a second, you see, not discussing Rabbi Meir, but you see Rabbi Huda is penalizing Shaygig Atamezid, even though this bittul of the Agoy Ziperich is rabbinic prohibition, even when they're intact. Because biblically there's no difference in chashav and not. Everything's bottled. The Torah says in Shemais Chaf Gimel, Achiram Lahatis. Rabbinically, biblically, all you need is a ratio of 2 to 1. Rabbanon Geyser, they hold it has to have bottle b'shishin, bottle b'meya, bottle b'masayim, bottle b'elef. So wait a second, you see a contradiction of Yehuda. We have an Issur D'Rabbanan, which, according to Yehuda, he's saying that even shaygig is going to be usher, obviously atamezid. Rabbi Shimon, they say that no, b'shaygig yalu, if it was done by mistake, then it will be bottled. But mezid yalu, if you did it deliberately, you're not going to be able to make it the bittul. Says Gemara, so the Gemara spells out what we said. Over here in this halacha, biblically chad b'trei bottle, it's bottle in the ratio of 2 to 1. But Rabbanu the gods is only rabbinic decree. They're saying that for rabbinic law, I'm going to tell you that shayg is also going to be aser. I thought Rabbi Yehuda says that you're not knas shayg atamezid by rabbinic law. Says Gemara, Hasamai the time of Rabbi Yehuda. The other reason Rabbi Yehuda is uniquely to that halacha. Because you're going to come to be deceptive and you're going to do it deliberately, and you're going to say, "Oh, I didn't realize. Did I just put that down on the nuts? I can't believe I just did that. I didn't intend to be mavatlet." So there, we're going to penalize you. Generally, shaygi, we're not going to penalize you. But there, yes. Okay, we resolved Rabbi Yehuda, but now the way classic Talmudic style, once we brought in something, we're going to pose parenthetically now. One of the Tanoim mentioned over there who disagreed with Rabbi Yehuda was Rabbi Yossi. He said b'shaygi it will be bottled, but mezid not. Now we have a contradiction on that. Because now we're learning the Mishnah Masechtas Arla. It says Natiyah shel Arla b'shel klaya karam. If you have a sapling, a planting of something of Arla in its first 3 years, or it was planted in a vineyard with other types, which makes it forbidden of a mixture, a forbidden mixture. Okay, that shenis arva ben Natiyah acheres. Now that sapling, which is aser because of Arla klaya karam, gets mixed up with other saplings, other trees. Harizal yilakit. So now, when you have these trees all together, you're not allowed to pick the fruits. Why? Because when it's in its place, these trees, when it's attached, it's considered significant. It's not going to be bottled. When you pluck the peiros, then it would be possible to create a bittul of 200 to 1 of Arla, and then you would be mevatel isur l'katchila. You'd be initially trying to nullify something. You're not allowed to do that. Then if you did, you didn't ask a shayla, and you already plucked it. Okay, then yala be'echad masayim, then it's going to be bottled in the ratio of 200 to 1 because you did it by mistake. You didn't intend to pick it to be mevatel. You thought it was already bottled when it was attached in all these saplings together, all these trees here. But like we said, as long as you do not intend to deliberately be mevatel by picking it off the tree. That's what the Tanna Kama says. The main opinion we want is the next one. Bishemi says, no, even if he intended to pick it, it's going to be bottled in a ratio of 200 to 1. Wait a second. Obviously, you see that even b'mezid, even though you did it deliberately, it's going to be bottled. That's not like what he said in the previous halacha of the goyzi perech. In that case, he said, "B'shayg be bottled." You did it deliberately? No, it's not going to be bottled. Here you see the guy's mamish deliberately trying to mevatel something, and still we say it's going to be bottled. That contradicts his own opinion. So he says, we learned on this. Amar Rabbi says, "Chazaka." We have a presumption. A person would not make his whole vineyard forbidden with one sapling. Meaning, a person would not plant an arla tree amongst all his other trees without any defining sign, and to make his whole vineyard forbidden because of one sapling. So therefore, what does that mean? So Rashi explains, since it's not common that you would have a tree mixed in over here to make everything forbidden, because it's mixed in, you don't know which one it is, that's what you need bittul for, because if you knew which one it is, you know which one it is. So the Rabbanan were not stringent to make exera even when you did it b'mezid, when you're picking the tree. But yeah, when something of Isra falls into heter, like the case of the nuts of a geyser pedich, it is common, and there he was geyser when you do it b'mezid. This is chazaka. There's a presumption. You're not going to make it forbidden with one planting, and therefore it's not common that you would have such a case, and therefore, yeah, even b'mezid is not going to make it us. So we resolved him. The next Mishnah, again another tikkun olam regarding the halacha of pigul, like we said, if a kohen performs avodah of a korban with the intention that the korban be eaten after its designated time, the korban becomes possible, and the person who eats from it, the maize is punished with karas. So the Mishnah says, if a kohen had a machshava pigul in the base of maize when he's doing the avodah, if he did it mezidin, if they did it deliberately, chayavin, then they're going to be liable. Regarding shogig, we had one mandama that says they're going to be pater because we said we want him to notify him to let him know. So even if you're going to say, that's what we had the discussion regarding hezek shen nikish mehezek, regarding the halacha, but if you do it deliberately, you're going to be chayiv. So the Gemara says, Tarman, the Gemara says, quotes a brisa, which relates to halacha the Mishnah. Let's say someone was trying to help someone out with his pure produce. Normally he says to him, I want you to know, I don't want to tell you, but I'm telling you. The Taras I was doing with you, they became tummy. Or let's say he was busy with doing his karbanis for him. Normally he says to him, I want you to know, the karbanis I was doing for you, I made a pigel. I had a machshav chutz l'zmanei. Says the Bryce and Neman, he's believed. Okay, that's case number one. But let's say he tells him, it's not today when he's doing taharis with him. Not like he's moving his stuff and he's saying, oh, by the way, I just touched, I made a tummy. It says, 2 weeks ago, when I was helping you with taharis, then it became tummy. Or when I was doing the carbon for you, by the way, a week ago, and I was doing it, I had a machshav pigel, in him is not believed. So the Gemara says, What's the difference between the Reish and the Seifa? They both seem to be the same thing. What's the difference if it's now or if it was last week? So the Gemara has two approaches. Amabai says, Kol shebiyadai, whatever the person has the ability to do when he's notifying him, and now he could do that same thing, so then he's believed. So the Reish is talking about, for example, where he's still holding the guy's stuff. He can make a tummy. Or he's still doing the avodah, he can make a pigel. Because by karbanis, we're talking about kohen who's doing the avodah, he lets him know between the shchita and the zrik. He says, by the way, I want you to know, when I was doing the shchita, I had a mind that should be eaten chutz hazmanei. Where he still has in hand, if he wants, he can do pickle right now, but the other avodas. But when he says Yom Pliny that day, he doesn't have it in his hand anymore. So he has no right to be believed, because why should we believe you? We only believe you because it's biyadcha that you could do it if you wanted to, so why not believe me? So that says Abaya, that's the difference between the two different cases. Rav Amay says a different approach. He says, no, even though he doesn't have it in his hand right now, he is believed, although Taisa does say it's only because originally it was in his hand, but even if it's not in his hand right now, so then what's the understanding of the Sefer? So why, when he says Yom Pliny, he's not believed? Because that's a specific case. That's going to Ashkeche, where he encountered him once before. He had done his carbon for him on Sunday. And then he sees him on Monday, it's a holiday. But he doesn't tell him anything. And then on Wednesday, Ashkeche finds him. He says, by the way, on Sunday when I did the avodah of you, I made a pigel. If you did it, you would have told me on Monday. So now you're not believed to say, that's why Yom Pliny is not going to be making it possible. That's Machlekes Abaye and Rava. Now the Gemara brings the story that Huda Amalei Lechavri. Someone said to his friend, "Taharais shasisim chabiyim plain in nitmu." Oh, you know the taharis that I did with you on that day became tamei. So coming to Rami, came from Rabami. Amalei said to him, "Look, shudas hadin, the halacha really would tell us. In other words, the din would be that ein neman, that this guy is not believed because, like Abaye had interpreted the Bryce, he says if it's not in his hand right now, it's not biyad lasis, so he's not believed to say." So on that, I'm love Rabbi Asir. Rabbi Asir said in front of him, Rebbe at the Oimekain. Rebbe, you say this that he's not believed. But Hochel Rabbi Yechon, Meshur Rabbi Yechon said, Rabbi Yechon, Ma'asa, what could I do? Shatari Manasa, the Torah does believe him, meaning even at a later point in time, as we're going to explain right now, which is also like Rava. Rava said that even if it's a later point in time, as long as you didn't meet him once before, you are believed. So it says, where does the Torah believe him? What Rabbi Yechon is saying in the name of Rabbi Yechon, that Torah believes him, where do you see that? So interesting raya. I'm using my best, and he says like this. A Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim will prove this idea. He brings the power and the star into the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And he's the only one over there. No one sees him. The Chiyama Pigel, when he says that he made it Pigel, Mehem, and he's believed. How do we know this? Because the pasuk says, the one who's bringing it Loi Chashav, which the Gemara says Loi Chashav means he's not going to have Machshava Pigel. Because if he does, it's going to be Pigel. Now, B'naya Dinan, on Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol made it Pigel, how do we know it became Pigel if we don't believe him? Now, Taisa points out, says, wait a second. First of all, it's not true. You can't make pigel inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim because you learn it from Shlam. So he says, you're right. Although it's not going to be pigel, it's going to be puzzle. Pigel, when we say, will be his love dafka. But then Taisa says a bigger one. He says, how do you know the Kohen Gadol we believe him? Who said? Says Taisa, no, it's partial to the Gemara that all Kabbanas, pigel is shaykh, but all the Alavoidas. So it's obvious that the Kohen Gadol could make it pigel. But how's he going to make it pigel? How do we know it's pigel if we don't believe him? But says, no one's allowed to be the Almighty when he's doing that Veda. Allah, obviously, from the heavens believed. Wow, what an interesting raya. You see who believed the Kain that he said he made a pigel, even though no one's around. So obviously we believe him. Says whoa, what's the raya? The dimma maybe when the pasuk says it's going to be pigel is the shamani the pugel. We hear he said out loud, kaifer in the Kodesh Kodeshim. He says, I'm spraying it with the intention of sacrifice the mum chutzas manai. So maybe we heard him. Who said we believe him? Says no. If we don't believe him to say that he did it during the avodah itself, although we heard him screaming that he's making a pigel, he wouldn't be believed because the dimma lebasa hachi. Maybe after he did the avodah shtick, Kamar, he said it. Oh, I'm doing it. He already did it already 5 minutes ago. Oh, I'm doing it, shame pigel. So you don't know this. You would obviously have to believe him anyway. Says, wait a second. But maybe, I'll tell you the case that we believe him. Is the chazine b'pishpish. We see him through the pishpish when he was saying it. We saw he was spraying it as he was saying it, because Rash's pishpish is a small opening that was by the Beis HaChalifas, which opened up into the Heichel. There were 2 of them, one in the north, one in the south. Which is basically right and left. As the Bryce teaches in Zvachim, we have to have these 2 pishpish in the Beis HaChalifas, one north and south, to validate the whole Azara, the north and the south, for Shchitas Kachem Kalam, that it should be considered on all sides. B'shach Pesach has to be that you can be able to see whatever. Now, Rashi also says actually was a small little opening also in the back by the Kodesh or Kodeshim. So why are we asking only maybe you saw him through the pishpish? Rashi says because the Tumah Da'azoi is on the Perechas in the Heichel. But you're right, regarding that, he didn't listen from them. You could also ask that you see him through that little opening in the back. But be that as it may, how do you know you believe him? Says Kasha. It's not a tif, it is a difficulty. How do you know you believe him? What's the raya that we believe him? It could be they saw him when he was screaming, they saw him doing that. The Gemara brings a story, Huda also kamei de Rabami. There's a person who came up under Rabami. Amalei said to him, this Torah school that I wrote for that guy, God's name's inside, I didn't write it for God's name, which obviously makes it possible. So Amalei said to him, wait a second, Sefer Torah b'yadmi, who's holding on to Sefer Torah right now? The buyer already has it. Amalei says, you believe to lose your payments, they don't have to pay you now, because obviously you didn't do your job. But you not believe to cause a loss to the Sefer Torah, because it's not in your hand, like we said before. If it's not in your hand, you're not believed. It's interesting, we'll believe you that you won't get paid, but we won't believe you to make it possible. So Rabbi says, wait a second. Although he shouldn't get paid for writing God's names, why does he lose out the rest of the Sefer Torah? He wrote that appropriately. Amalei says, yes, you lose all the payment. Because you're called Sefer Torah, any Sefer Torah that God's names are not written in Lishman, in the Shabbat is not worth anything. Because it's not a complete Sefer Torah, so it doesn't have any value. Says, why? Why don't you take a quill, a pen, and go over it for God's name's sake, and sanctify it? Says obviously come on, so who would it be like? Name it like Rabbi Yehuda. Obviously you don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Because the nan, which actually a Brisa says, someone had to write God's name. And this Gavin Licht of Yehuda, interesting case. He intended to write Yehuda. He thought he had to write Yehuda. Now he made a mistake in that mistake. In writing Yehuda, he didn't write a Daled. So he ended up writing God's name, but not for the right sake. Marvel of Kumas. What you should do is take the quill, go over it for writing on top of the writing for God's name, and you'll sanctify it to Rabbi Yehuda. They say no, in the Shem and the That's not a choice way of doing it. But one thing you see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you'd be able to do it over. Why is he losing the whole Sefer Torah? Says I felt to you even say the halacha was being said according to Rabbi Yehuda. Ad kind of come Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rabbi Yehuda saying? Is halacha. One time, God's name, you made a mistake. You thought you're writing Yehuda, you didn't write with the dal. Okay, you could go over and write over. Of the Kuli Sefer Torah, but to have the whole Sefer Torah, every one of God's names, which he never had in mind, Hashem Shemai, he never went to the mikveh before that, then you can't even call to Yehuda to go over with the quill. But from the Mexican, it looks like it's spotted. You always see highlighted because you're going to be double inking on all of them. Even according to him, that would not be a choice way of doing it, and therefore it's a total washout. Another story says the Mahu does like coming to Rabbo. Someone came to Rabbo. Amalei said the Torah school I wrote for that guy, the parchment, I didn't process it. Taisa previously brings a raya that you see that the halacha is that the processing has to be done lishman from this halacha. So Amalei said, wait a second, Sefer Torah biyad me. Who has the Sefer Torah now? Amalei said, the guy who bought it from me has it. Amalei says, since you believe to lose your payment, you are believed to lose the Sefer Torah. To ruin the Sefer Torah. And you're right, they can't use it. Says the Gemara, wait a second. Why was this different than the previous story he said, that he said you're not believed to cause a loss to the Sefer Torah? Why here are you believed to make a loss to the Sefer Torah? So says the Gemara, no, the difference is Hasam, you could say that the guy is lying. He just wants to get back at the guy. The guy got him down from 80K, he wanted to charge him Sefer Torah, he got him down to 60K. You know what, I'm going to get this guy. So he intends to provoke him, but he makes a mistake. He thinks he's not going to lose all the payment he was supposed to give at Sefer Torah. He thinks he's only going to lose for the payment of God's names that he was supposed to write. Because he makes a mistake with Rabbi Yirmiyah, who asked that question and says, wait a second, you should get paid for the rest of Sefer Torah. And that's the mistake of the Sefer. So maybe it's not really possible. But Hach over here, regarding the parchment, even since this guy knows the Kamafsid Kule Agra, he knows he's going to lose his whole payment through this claim, because if the whole parchment is not good, the whole Sefer Torah is not good. But Asvam, and still he says it, Eimer Kushta Kamar, I could say maybe he's telling the truth. And therefore, since he's losing his wages, he is going to be believed, even if it's not B'yadai. And therefore, that's why he's Neman L'Hasid the Sefer Torah. Thank you for any time for hosting us.